Hey Robbie, it's good to catch up. Thank you for agreeing to do this little interview to just dive a little bit more into your recovery, ask some direct questions, and just catch up and see how you've been, mate.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you. So we first met when I was working in Harley Street in London. It was right at the beginning when I opened the pelvic pain clinic. So that must be almost 6 years ago now.
Yes, it would
Five
be.
and a half, 6 years, yeah. And so tell us a little bit about the history of your journey with pelvic pain. Can you introduce your symptoms and some of the things that you did before you came to me?
Yes, I was having uh, pelvic pain problems for probably about a year before I managed to find you. And I had gone to various urologists and I'd have various tests done, and nobody could find anything obvious. And it was kind of diagnosed that I had prostatitis.
Mm.
And I was in a lot of pain. It started with not being able to urinate, and it was burning, and it was just really uncomfortable, very painful. And then it became more widespread around the pelvis area, and I started to become quite anxious because the doctors couldn't really help or tell me what was wrong, and they put me on antibiotics, but that made no difference. And eventually I started to have panic attacks because I didn't know what was happening to me, and I didn't know why it was happening to me. And things started to spiral down. I was struggling with my work, so I ride horses and train horses for a living, and I was now no longer able to ride, and I'd had to give some of my rides to other people. So I was losing business and money. I had a few places that I could still go to and operate. I was still functioning. I was still going to the gym a couple of times a week, and I was still able to stand and teach, but it was very uncomfortable, and I was not in a good place. And eventually I found you. and I came to see you, and one of the first things you started to do with me was to change my terminology. And I remember this very clearly, and I think I came to you and I was saying to you that I have serious pains, real problems, and these awful episodes, and I can't do anything, and I'm anxious. And one of the first things that you persuaded me to do was to rephrase for me and say to me, let's call this a flare up, and let's start giving it our marks out of 10. Let's start introducing scales. And you started giving me some tools and techniques to go away with. And that really started my road to a very slow and bumpy recovery. And I think over the last 5 years, my trajectory has continued to climb. There has been a few pitfalls when I've had some really anxious times in my life. I went through a very complicated divorce a few years ago, and I had a bit of a setback. But really, I would say I am now around 99% recovered, and I'm riding as many horses as I was before my pelvic pain started, and I'm working probably more than I've ever done before. I gym and swim every day. But I have changed some of my lifestyle. So, for example, I add in 15 minutes of yoga stretches that you taught me on, I think it was our second or third session. I have also, if I feel tired, I don't have a problem going to bed for an hour in the middle of the day, or finding a sofa somewhere and having a kip and not feeling guilty about it. And so knowing what my physical limitations are now, before I feel any discomfort or any twinges, really helps. And I think for me, the beginning of my recovery was about getting my mental state correct. And I had started off for the first year trying to fix the problem, which was my pelvis area, which was in pain. Yeah. With various urologists and doctors, and acupuncture and all kinds of things, and not realizing until I had met you that I needed to start from the top. I needed to start with my head. I needed to get my anxiety under control. I needed to, famously, you said to me, which I had written down all over my house in little post-its, which was calm this shit down, which really helped me a lot. And once I had started to get my head around the fact that I was safe and that everything was okay, did some work. You put me in contact with a pain specialist, and I worked with them a little bit, which really helped to understand pain. And I also did some CBT as well for anxiety and for my panic attacks. Yeah. And really understanding how my brain was working started to help. And when that started to help, then physically it started to trickle down, until eventually everything started working again as one complete organism, as it should, and everything working together. So it has been a huge journey. Funnily enough, and this probably sounds a really bizarre thing to say, I wouldn't change it. If I could go back and change it, I wouldn't, even though I was in a lot of discomfort for quite a long time. It has led me to a place in my life of great serenity and power. And I never thought I'd ever be like this. So yes, it's been difficult, but with the right help and putting in the work, and it's continual. The work is continual. It's not, oh, I'm better now and everything is fine. I have to keep doing the work. I have to do my physical exercises. I have to do my mental exercises. I have to rest. I have to say no. I have to make sure that I'm not around people anymore that create drama or stress in my life, who aren't supportive, which for me creates an internal anxiety, and just reshaping my life, which is stressful and very anxious, going through a divorce to do that. But yeah, came out the other side. One of the things that was also really powerful for me in my recovery was, at the time, you had a support group up and running. Yeah. And turning up to the support group and listening to other people with similar problems or worse problems, and made me realize that, my goodness, although I'm experiencing difficulty, I'm nothing on the level of somebody else who hasn't been able to go to the bathroom for 5 or 6 years without experiencing pain. And just talking openly with other people was a huge help, to understand that you're not the only one going through this, that there are so many people with a similar predicament. And because nobody really talks about it, nobody really shares anything, and therefore it becomes very internal. And yeah, so that was great. That was very powerful for me. Finding the similarities as well between all of us in the group was fascinating as well. I think most of us were high achievers, people pleasers, fairly hard on ourselves. A lot of people doing a lot of sport, stressful jobs. Yes, it was very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Can I just unpack and go back and
Yes.
on a couple of bits there, because there's so much gold in what you've been saying. It's wonderful to hear your messaging about how you wouldn't change what you've been through, given the choice, because of where you are now. And what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that you're just placing yourself at the top of the pile. You're prioritizing yourself a lot more so now, that you are listening to your body and you're giving yourself permission to say, hey, I don't need to, like, if I'm tired, I'm going to go and give myself permission to take a break. I want to have a well-balanced life. So I am going to gym and swim, and I am going to do some yoga, and I am going to go back to the work that you loved and was so central to who you were. And to be told you can't ride horses anymore, or to not even be able to get on a horse because of the level of comfort that you had, or discomfort, I should say, that's hugely demanding on you. You're already suffering because of the symptoms. You've mentioned panic attacks in there as well. And then to not do the thing that's right at the core of who you are, not just a hobby, not just something you like to do on the weekend, but this was who you were. And now it's really lovely to get to hear you getting back to who you are again now, like to be where you are, doing more teaching than you did perhaps even before when we met, but just really owning it again, Robbie. So I guess just in terms of symptoms, briefly, you mentioned that you started off with some urinary symptoms and that progressed and it got more sore in your pelvis. And so sitting on a horse was not an option. So where else were you getting symptoms of discomfort, etc., if you don't mind me asking?
It was really internally around the pelvis, the whole of the front of the pelvis, really. And yes, it was kind of about 4 fingers below my belly button, all the way down. Really, that whole area just was. The sensation would go from sometimes burning to very tight, to almost pins and needles sometimes. It would move around quite a lot depending on how I sat or what I was doing. I was convinced at one point that diet was having an effect, but I still never ever found out if it was. I did cut out some things, but I don't think diet had a big impact. Strangely enough, when I was speaking to a lot of people about this in the support group, alcohol seemed to make it worse for everybody. With me, alcohol made it better.
Yeah.
So I think that was to do with generally relaxing this area. And I think because I had got so tight in my pelvis area because of the pain and everything was firing, because over probably years, to be honest, it had been coming on. And I now no longer knew how to let that area relax. So and obviously that affected me mentally. So alcohol, having a drink, actually just made me relax and made me feel better. It was one of the few times where any discomfort went away. I'm not a big drinker, so I'd only ever have 1 or 2 drinks max anyway, but that was a notable difference for me. So yes, yeah.
And we can't, I guess 2 things here. Not every case is the same. We can't just tarnish all pelvic pain patients with stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Because actually for it might actually offer relief. And although we can't prescribe that, we need to be very careful around prescribing what can help in a patient's recovery. It's also nice to know that there can be some relief of symptoms if you did have a drink. Not that became a front and center self-care technique, because you are excellent and outstanding at just following the suggestions, making the changes in your lifestyle, having more balance more of the time. We were even getting you to how do we replicate the horse? Let's not have you on the horse. Let's have you, I think, on a dummy horse, or I can't remember what it was.
We just had a saddle.
Saddle.
Just sitting in the saddle, and just the thought, just sometimes looking at a saddle would send me off.
To get back to that position where, and I think there were two horses, one that you weren't riding very much, but it was actually more gentle and a smaller horse, and an easier horse for you to take the next steps to get back on. So yeah, kind of staging the saddle, giving you permission and the confidence and the trust in your body to say, okay, this is not nice. It's a bit panic inducing, but I want to get back in the saddle. And I always said to you, this would be part of your recovery. This is a massive, massive part of your recovery because it's who you are. And I want you to be able to feel that connection with who you were, but also have that as part of your future as well, knowing that this will be part of the aim to get you back on the horse. Because of how much it means to you.
I remember at the time really struggling with what you were saying to me and thinking there's no way. At that time, I was like, that absolute nonsense. I was like, I will never be able to ride again. And I just told myself this whole story, that was over that part of my life. And it was that almost feeling of, well, this is now over, which it almost sent me into a feeling as if a part of me had died, and my body had let me down so much. I had almost gone into mourning. And I look back now and I realized that's what I was experiencing, and at the time I didn't really recognize it. So it was, yes. And I remember you talking a lot to me about robustness and plasticity. And those two words have always stayed with me in everything that I've been doing, whether it's the stretches or getting back on a horse, and knowing that I needed to make myself more robust again. And the only way I'm going to do that is with neuroplasticity. And that's not going to happen just by sitting at home and feeling sorry for myself and wishing this would go away. I had to step up and be proactive into doing it, whether I was uncomfortable or not. So, yes.
And that can be quite scary as well. You know, as you said there, Robbie, when I was saying that you can get on the horse and that can be still a part of you, there's a huge, like, I can't do it now, so how the hell am I going to be able to conceive of doing that in the future? And as you were saying and describing that, the word that was coming to me was mourning for a sense of who the person that you used to be was no longer connected to who you were currently. And because of that, there was no chance of that being part of your future as well. So to hear that you're back and doing this now and back and doing everything that you're doing, it's so heartwarming. Because, and I always say this, but you made the difference there. I get the easy job. I just get to, I'm like the sat nav, do some of this, try that, maybe back off here a little bit.
Great voice on the sat nav.
You're the person who's got to put in the legwork. You're the person who's got to literally do the things that I'm recommending and suggesting. So it was great working with you, and it's a real pleasure to hear where you are now.
Well, I would never have done it without you. So, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. What would you say, Robbie, if you could speak to, and you mentioned about the support groups there, if you could offer support to someone else at the moment, maybe who's going through their journey somewhere near the beginning, do you have a message for that person that you feel would help them?
Yes. Start with your mind. Start with your mind and get help. Don't do it alone, and don't believe you are on your own. And it's not a weakness, and you haven't failed at anything. And start with the mind before you start trying to fix physically. You cannot just take a pill for this. So yes.
Yeah, lovely messaging there. And you're right, there is nothing to be ashamed of. You're not a failure. You're not weak. It's just sometimes we need a little bit of help from other people. and body and mind are connected heavily. Much of the approaches that you get down the physiotherapy, traditional physiotherapy route, or the GPs or urologist, is all about the body. But actually, we need to consider that there are other aspects to an individual, and therefore more opportunities for recovery when we do consider you as a whole, more than just your pelvis.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably what I've learned more than anything through this. Yeah.
Integrated. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you once again, Robbie. That's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Most welcome.